The silence before the storm. The galaxy was quiet. Too quiet. From her seat in the observation deck of the Zelfari, listening post Viren's eye, Commander Lysa Varine watched the black void stretch endlessly before her. Only the slow drift of distant stars and the steady hum of the station's systems broke the stillness. For years, nothing unexpected had ever happened here, until tonight. A soft chime echoed across the control room. "Commander," the sensor officer called. "We're picking up something strange." Lysa didn't move at first. She had heard the same tone hundreds of times before, usually a glitch, a rock passing too close to the sensor net, or a ghost. Signal from an old probe. But the officer's voice held a tremor. "Show me," she ordered. A holographic projection bloomed in the air-deep space, far from any known trade routes. A faint signal pulsed in the darkness, slow and steady, like a heartbeat. Its origin was unknown. And its speed? Impossible. Lysa frowned. "Identify the ship." The officer shook his head. "Not in our registry." Not in any registry. The room fell silent. For centuries, the Zelfari Alliance had believed Earth was nothing more than a backwater planet, isolated and harmless. Humans had no known fleets, no major colonies beyond their home star, and no alliances worth noting. They were ignored, pitied, even mocked in some council chambers. Lysa herself had once said during a council meeting, "They don't even have warships." The other delegates had laughed, but this signal, this wasn't coming from a merchant freighter. It wasn't coming from any design she recognized. Hours later, the station's deep-range scanners locked onto the source. The signal wasn't just approaching, it was accelerating. And it was headed straight for Zelfari Prime. Lysa's second-in-command stepped close, lowering his voice. "Commander, what if it's them?" "Them?" she asked sharply. "Humans." She almost laughed, but the look on his face stopped her. "Humans don't have ships that can move this fast," she said. His voice was steady. "Maybe they do now." 3 star systems away, in the cold shadows of the Oort cloud, something vast was moving. Hidden from prying eyes for decades, the Earth Dreadnought program had been quietly assembling humanity's answer to the galaxy's arrogance in a cavernous shipyard carved into the ice of a nameless asteroid. Colossal warships were being completed hulls of dark titanium, weapon mounts bristling like the spines of ancient beasts, engines the size of city blocks. Each one was a floating fortress, designed not for defense, but for domination. For years, only the Terran Defense Council had known of their existence. Even most humans had no idea. The galaxy thought Earth was alone. The galaxy thought wrong. On the command deck of the dreadnought TNS Resolute, Admiral Cade Mercer stood before a vast star map. His voice was low, but every officer in the room heard the steel behind it. "Our enemies think we are scattered, weak, alone. They believe they can surround Earth and take what they want. They believe wrong." A ripple of agreement moved through the crew. Cade continued, "Operation Horizon begins now. We are not defending Earth. We are bringing the fight to them. And when they look up, they will see our skies." Back at Varen's eye, Lysa Varine's station continued tracking the incoming signal. More pings began to appear on the holographic display. First 1, then 3, then 12. What in the void? One officer whispered. "They're multiplying," another said, disbelief in his tone. "No," Lysa corrected, her voice suddenly dry. "They're a fleet." On the diplomatic channel, word began to spread. The coalition that had planned to strike Earth laughed at first, just as they always had. But as the hours passed, the reports grew impossible to ignore. Something massive was moving, and it was moving faster than any ship on record. An old ambassador from the Rim world said, "At best, if those are humans, then the galaxy is about to change." From the Resolute, Admiral Mercer's orders went out to every Terran warship. Engines roared to life, shields hummed, and weapon systems powered up with a low, dangerous thrum. On the observation deck, Junior Officer Rin Solis watched the stars through reinforced glass. "Sir," he said quietly, "this will be the first time most of the galaxy sees our fleet." Cade Mercer's eyes narrowed. "And let's make sure it's a sight they never forget." Hours later, the first Terran dreadnoughts crossed into Zelfari space. The stars around Varen's eye seemed to vanish as shadows fell across the station, shadows cast by ships so enormous they blotted out the light. Lysa Vareen stood frozen, staring at the impossible. Hulls darker than the void. Engines glowing, like captured suns. Hundreds of escorts moving in perfect formation. In that moment, she realized the truth. Earth had never been alone. Earth had been waiting. And now, the storm had arrived. The threat arrives. The meeting room of the Zelfari Alliance Council was built for comfort, not war. Polished marble floors, tall crystal windows, and golden banners lined the walls. But that morning, the air inside felt heavy. Representatives from 12 star systems sat around a circular table, their voices raised in panic. "They're moving fleets toward our core worlds." One counselor shouted. "They are not fleets," another argued. "They are human fleets. Earth doesn't have warships." Lysa Vareen stood at the edge of the chamber, still in her dark blue military uniform from Varen's eye. "I have seen them," she said, her voice cutting through the noise. "Dreadnoughts, dozens of them, and more coming." The room fell silent for a heartbeat, and erupted again. A broad-shouldered Turvok counselor slammed a fist against the table. "If humans have ships, they must have help. No backwater planet builds a fleet like that in secret." "They don't have help," Lysa replied. "They have been preparing for years." "Then we strike now," a sharp-voiced advisor said. "Hit them before they can organize." The council murmured in agreement. To them, the idea of attacking first seemed safer than waiting. They had no idea that it was already too late. Far beyond Zelfari space, in the cold quiet of the void, a Terran fleet was already moving. On the command deck of the TNS Resolute, Admiral Cade Mercer studied a holographic map showing alien fleet movements. Red markers glowed over key points, supply lines, fuel depots, weapon stations. Lieutenant Rin Solis stepped forward. "Sir, long-range scans confirm the Coalition is gathering ships at 3 main staging areas. They're preparing to launch." Mercer's lips curled into the faintest hint of a smile. "Good. Let them think they're in control. By the time they arrive at Sol, their fleets will already be in ruins." The plan was codenamed Operation Horizon. Step 1. Intercept and destroy the Coalition supply chain before they could reach human space. Step 2. Push deep into enemy territory to show that humanity wasn't just defending. It was advancing. This wasn't going to be a border skirmish. This was going to be a statement. The Coalition, however, still believed Earth could be caught off guard. On the capital world of the Torvan Dominion, High Commander Varen addressed his officers. "Humanity is alone," he declared. "They have no allies, no resource network, and no experience in large-scale war. We will break their fleets in the first engagement." One junior officer hesitated before speaking. "Sir, with respect, the dreadnoughts we've seen, Varen's." Eyes narrowed. "They are nothing but metal and arrogance. We have faced worse." The young officer didn't argue further, but the unease in his eyes was clear. On the Resolute, the mood was far different. The crew moved with quiet efficiency, their faces calm but focused. In the hangar bays, squadrons of interceptors and bombers stood ready, pilots running last-minute checks. The massive dreadnought's corridors hummed with the deep vibration of its engines. preparing for a warp jump that would take them into Coalition space. Rin Solas watched from the observation deck as smaller Terran warships formed up around the fleet. "Sir," he said to Admiral Mercer, "they're going to realize soon that we're not defending, we're hunting." Mercer's eyes stayed on the stars. "Let them realize. Fear is part of the message." Hours later, in a sector known for its asteroid mining, the Coalition's first supply convoy came under attack. The ambush was silent at first. No warnings, no hail. Just shadows moving between the rocks. Then, without a sound, the void lit up. Railgun slugs and plasma bursts tore through the convoy's lead ships. Fuel tankers ignited like suns, casting fire across the asteroids. By the time Coalition reinforcements arrived, there was nothing left but drifting wreckage and the cold echo of defeat. Back in the Zelthari council chamber, a messenger burst in with the report. "The first convoy, it's gone. All of it. No survivors." The counselors stared at one another in shock. "They moved faster than we expected," one whispered. Lacevarine didn't look surprised. She only said one thing. "You all thought Earth stood alone. You were wrong. And now they're coming." In the black expanse beyond the Council's reach, the Terran fleet gathered again, larger this time, deadlier. The humans weren't just answering a threat. They were declaring war on anyone who believed they were weak. The next step wasn't defense. It was the first public strike. The first sight, the first world to see them, was Zelthari Prime. It began as an ordinary morning. The twin suns were rising over the crystal spires of the capital. Traders opened their market stalls. Children hurried to learning halls. Airships drifted lazily between towering skyports. And the shadows came. At first, people thought it was a passing cloud rare, but not impossible. But the sky kept darkening. The light from both suns dimmed until it was as if night had returned. Every head turned upward. They saw nothing at first, only the faint gleam of metal high above. Then the shapes grew larger, sharper, blocking more and more of the sky. And then they saw the fleet. A dozen colossal warships, black and silver, glided silently into the upper atmosphere. Their hulls were covered in heavy armor plating. There, engines glowing like captured stars. Around them, hundreds of smaller escort ships moved in tight formation. Like a single living organism. The largest of them all, the TNS Resolute, broke formation and hovered over the capital. Its shadow swallowed entire districts. On its hull, enormous white letters spelled a name in a language every alien recognized: Terran Navy. Inside the capital's high council tower, alarm screamed. "Who are they?" A security officer demanded. The defense minister's voice shook. "They're human ships. And they're not broadcasting a request to land. They're broadcasting a warning." Up in orbit, on the bridge of the Resolute, Admiral Cade Mercer stood before the communications officer. "Open a channel to Zelthari Prime," he ordered. A moment later, his voice echoed through every frequency, every speaker, every holographic display in the city below. "To the governments of the Zelthari Alliance, Earth stands with its own. Stand down your fleets. Any hostile action will be met with immediate destruction." In the streets, panic rippled through the crowds. People rushed to shelters. Traders slammed shut their stalls. From balconies, children watched in awe as the alien fleet they had been told could not exist now hung above their heads. Some citizens whispered in disbelief. Others spoke in fear. A few, quietly, spoke in respect. Back in the council chamber, arguments exploded. "We can't surrender." One shouted, "They're bluffing." "They are not bluffing," Lacevarine said flatly, remembering the sight of the fleet from Varen's eye. "This is a show of strength. And it's only the beginning." The Resolute didn't fire a shot. It didn't need to. The message was already clear. Humanity was no longer hiding, but in the darkness beyond Zelfari space, the rest of the Terran fleet was already on the move. The dreadnoughts had been seen now, and that meant the next phase could begin. The coalition worlds that had planned to march on. Earth would soon learn what it meant to have their skies filled with Terran steel dot in a quiet corner of the Resolute's observation deck. Lieutenant Rin Solas watched Zelthari Prime shrink below them as the fleet pulled back into orbit. They'll never forget this sight, he said. Admiral Nurser didn't look away from the star map. Good. The galaxy needs to remember. Before they decide to test us again. The humans had crossed their first alien sky. The next skies they crossed would not be warnings. They would be battlefields. The opening strike, the Coalition's main supply hub, Varro Station, was the heart of their war plan. From here, fuel tankers, weapons transports, and medical freighters fanned out to every fleet preparing to move on Earth. For decades, Varro Station had been untouchable, guarded by a ring of heavy cruisers, minefields, and automated defense turrets. That was about to change. In the void, just beyond sensor range, the Terran fleet drifted in complete silence. All lights dimmed, all communications locked down to tight beam encryption. On the bridge of the TNS Resolute, Admiral Cade Mercer stood before the tactical map. Time to target? He asked. 3 minutes until firing range, sir, replied. Lieutenant Rin Soles. Mercer gave a single nod. Weapons hot. No warnings, no survivors. The fleet moved forward, slow and steady. The escorts spread out, their engines flaring like faint blue stars. The dreadnoughts adjusted their positions, lining up firing arcs with mechanical precision. When the order came, it was almost quiet. Fire. The blackness of space erupted into light. From the Resolute's forward batteries, tungsten slugs. The size of shuttles screamed across the void at near light speed. They tore through the outer defense ring in seconds, smashing cruisers apart before their crews even realized they were under attack. Missile salvos from the Titan and Horizon followed, each warhead guided by AI that hunted targets with deadly accuracy. On Varro Station, alarms blared. The station commander stumbled into the control room, eyes wide. What's happening? He shouted. Unknown warships human inside the perimeter. Shields dropping fast. The commander froze. Humans? That's impossible. A railgun slug tore through the station's docking ring, sending chunks of metal spinning into space. Dozens of fuel tanks ignited at once, blooming into fireballs that lit up the void. The Coalition fleet scrambled to respond, but their coordination collapsed instantly. Human ECM, electronic countermeasures, flooded their comm channels with white noise. Targeting sensors went dark. One Coalition cruiser tried to break through the chaos and ran. A Terran destroyer, only to be sliced in half by a single beam from the Resolute's spinal cannon. Within 12 minutes, the battle was over. Varro Station was nothing more than drifting wreckage. The minefields were gone. Every Coalition ship in the sector had been destroyed or disabled. In the command center of the Resolute, Rin Solas studied the sensor feed. All enemy assets neutralized. No. Coalition transmissions escaped the system. Mercer turned to the communications officer. Send the message. A moment later, a single encrypted burst raced across the stars, hitting every Coalition frequency. It was just 9 words. Your fleets will starve before they reach Earth. The Coalition's high command received the message with disbelief. On Torvin Prime, High Commander Varain slammed his fist into the table. How? How did they breach Varros without warning? No one answered. No one could. Back on the Resolute, the Terran fleet was already preparing for the next jump. Their objective was simple: cut the Coalition into pieces. Before it could ever form a united front, the galaxy had seen humanity's warships over alien skies. Now they would see what happened when those ships opened fire. The push into core space, The Coalition's outer defenses had fallen faster than anyone thought possible. Vero Station was gone. 3 major supply lines had been destroyed. And yet, humanity didn't stop there. They went deeper. In the black heart of Coalition space. Worlds that had never seen war now faced it head-on. Trade hubs went dark. Civilian ships fled in every direction, clogging warp lanes. On the bridge of the TNS Resolute, Admiral Cade Mercer stood over a map that glowed with red enemy systems. His voice was calm, but every word carried steel. We split into 3 groups. Hit them from all sides. They can't protect everything. The Terran fleet scattered into Wolfpack's fast strike forces built around a single dreadnought, with a swarm of destroyers and cruisers for support. The Titan led a raid on the Amoran shipyards, destroying half-built warships before they could be launched. The Horizon cut through the Claren defense grid, blasting orbital platforms to scrap. The Resolute moved toward the Coalition's communications hub, aiming to shut down their ability to coordinate at all. On the Amoran homeworld, sirens howled through the capital. Citizens stared up at the night sky as a Terran dreadnought dropped into low orbit, its massive silhouette blotting out the stars. No warning shots were fired. Instead, hundreds of Terran gunships descended into the atmosphere, targeting military installations with surgical precision. By sunrise, the Amoran fleet was gone, and not a single human ship had been lost. In the Coalition War Council, panic replaced arrogance. "They're not defending Earth," one commander said. "They're dismantling us. We need to use the weapon," another growled. The weapon was the Coalition's ultimate trump card, the Oblivion Core, a planet killer designed to fire a chain reaction beam through an entire solar system. It had never been used. On the Resolute, intelligence reports came in. The Coalition was moving the Oblivion Core to a forward position. Lieutenant Rin Solis turned to Admiral Mercer. "Sir, if they deploy that, they could take out Sol in one strike." Mercer's answer was immediate. "Then we take it before they even power it up." The Terran fleet jumped in mid-transfer. The Oblivion Core's escort fleet barely had time to register the warp signatures before human missiles and out. Railguns tore into their hulls. The weapon's massive frame shuddered under a precision strike that disabled its reactor. Coalition crews tried to self-destruct it, but Terran Marines stormed the control decks within minutes. When the dust cleared, the planet killer floated, harmlessly in space under human control. The message to the Coalition was brutal and clear. "We have your ultimate weapon. You will never use it against us. You will never threaten Earth again." Across Coalition space, the will to fight began to crumble. Worlds started declaring neutrality rather than risk becoming the next Amoran or Claren. From his command chair, on the Resolute, Admiral Mercer stared at the map. Red enemy markers were turning gray one by one as systems surrendered or cut off entirely. "Keep pushing," he said quietly. "When they think there's nowhere left to run, then we take their skies." The sky belongs to Earth. The Coalition capital, Velthera Prime, had never fallen. Its skies had never known enemy ships. Its people had never looked up in fear. Until now. It began as a flicker in the upper atmosphere. Then came the thunder of warped space tearing open. One by one, human dreadnoughts emerged, their dark hulls blotting out the sun. From the tallest spires of Velthera's capital city, people looked up and froze. The sky was no longer theirs, it belonged to Earth. On the bridge of the TNS Resolute, Admiral Cade Mercer watched as more Terran warships formed up above the planet. Their formation was tight, flawless, and overwhelming. "All ships in position," Lieutenant Rin Solis reported. "The planet's defense grid is locked on us." Mercer's voice was calm. "They can lock all they want. If they fire, they die." In the Coalition's High Council chamber, chaos erupted. They're here for total destruction. A minister shouted. No, said Grand Strategist Varen, staring at the tactical feed. His voice trembled. They're here to end the war. The Terran fleet opened a channel to the entire planet. Every screen, every radio, every com feed carried Admiral Mercer's voice. Citizens of Velthera Prime, your leaders brought war to Earth. Your fleets are gone. Your weapons are ours. We offer you a choice: surrender now, or vanish from the stars. In orbit, Terran ships powered their weapons, not to fire, but to show what they could do. The glow from their batteries turned the sky into a sea of light out down on the streets. The people could see it. They could feel it in the tremble of the ground as the dreadnoughts' engines held them in perfect position overhead. The Coalition's last standing fleet tried to mount a defense. 20 warships rose from hidden bunkers. Engines blazing. It took the humans less than 5 minutes to tear them apart. Railgun fire ripped through hulls. Missiles struck with surgical precision, and laser beams sliced ships clean in half. The debris settled. There was no doubt left. The Coalition Council transmitted a single-word reply to Earth: surrender. Mercer nodded at the comms officer. Accepted. Inform them their fleets are now under Terran command. And tell them this is only the beginning of a new order. For the first time in history, Velthera Prime skies belonged to someone else. For the first time, the galaxy understood what it meant to see Earth's fleet above their heads. War was over. The fear was not. The new order months had passed since the war ended. The galaxy was quieter now. Not because peace had truly settled, but because no one dared to challenge the power that now stood over them. On Velthera Prime, the Coalition's former capital, Terran banners hung beside alien flags. The skies were still patrolled by human dreadnoughts, their dark shapes gliding silently like watchful guardians or wardens. Depending on who you asked, alien merchants now traded under new regulations enforced by Terran patrols. Disputes between worlds were brought before Terran arbiters. The once powerful Coalition fleets had been absorbed into the Terran defense network. Admiral Cade Mercer stood on the balcony of the newly established Unified Council Hall. Beside him was Lysa Vareen, now serving as a special liaison between Earth and the former Coalition worlds. They're adjusting faster than I thought, she said quietly, watching alien and human delegates speaking together in the courtyard below. Mercer didn't smile. Fear is a strong motivator, but it can't last forever. We need respect to follow. Lysa gave him a sidelong glance. And if respect doesn't come? Mercer's gaze drifted to the sky, where the Resolute hovered in low orbit. Then they'll remember the day our ships crossed their skies. Across the galaxy, stories began to spread, some true, others exaggerated. Tales of Terran warships arriving without warning, of planetary defense grids crumbling in minutes, of entire fleets vanishing in a single battle. For some, these were warnings. For others, they were promises. In the Academy on Mars, young cadets studied detailed hollas of the campaign. In alien schools, children were taught a simpler version. Earth stood alone until it chose not to. Trade flowed faster than ever under Terran oversight. Pirate activity dropped to nearly zero. Even border disputes between rival alien powers became rare. The cost of war had been made clear to all, and the price was too high. One evening, on the Resolute's observation deck, Lieutenant Rin Solis asked Mercer the question many had wondered. Sir, do you think they'll ever forget? Mercer's answer was quiet but certain. No, that's the point. They don't have to love us. They just have to remember what happens when they think we're alone. And so the galaxy turned under a theft. New balance of power. Not ruled by fear alone, but shaped by the memory of a fleet that had crossed alien skies and changed the course of history. Ah, Fleet that had shown the truth to everyone who doubted Earth. The truth that humanity had never been weak, only patient, and patience had run out.